how do you actually even think about that whole space? And how did you get there? Like, I mean, what is your own personal journey?
So on that productivity piece, I think you're probably referring to the same article about where adoption is everywhere, but productivity gains that are nowhere to be seen, right?
Yes.
And I think part of the reason is because of just the haphazard or myopic way that just tagging on Copilot or Cursor or Cloud Code, and then now suddenly expecting, the productivity across the organization
Right.
has to just go up just because of how I did this in a narrow way. I think that's just not realistic.
Hello and welcome to this episode of WoW with AI, which is Ways of Working with AI. It's an AuxoAI podcast that we do with industry leaders, practitioners who think, breathe, and are reimagining their work with AI. Today I am thrilled to have Mirza Baig, who's the dear friend, and he's I've known him for a few years. He is one of the, I would say, leading thinkers and practitioners of using AI in the entire software development lifecycle. He's currently the senior director of engineering at Inspire Brands, but he has kind of taken leadership roles and senior engineering leadership roles for many years, and kind of gone like hands or neck deep in the whole AI space. Mirza, lovely to have you and welcome.
Thank you, Amaresh. Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here and have this conversation with you. We always have fun conversations, so I was looking forward to this all over the week through the weekend.
Likewise. That I know, and Mirza is now starting a new Substack with some of his insights too. So we'll put a link on that for that. But one topic here is software development lifecycle, and in some of our conversations, Mirza, you've kind of talked about that. It should not even be SDLC. It should be something else. It's like whatever reimagining SDLC with AI, right? And just to set some context, we work with a lot of clients, a lot of engineering leaders, a lot of leaders who are in SaaS companies who are trying to build new products and ship new products, private equity companies who own these SaaS companies. There's a common theme around. Earlier it was like, we want developer productivity, right? We want to ship fast or ship more with the same team, or we want to think about like how do we do things faster, because it seems like that's kind of the broader promise. And we have given everyone tools. We have bought Codex, we have bought Cursor, we have bought Replit, we've tried everything, right? And somehow it's kind of not working out. I mean, everyone says it works, but I don't see any net improvement. So that's kind of a thing. Again, we kind of go and see that thing. So first question for you, and I know you've thought about AI in a very deep way in this cycle. How do you actually even think about that whole space? And how did you get there? Like, I mean, what is your own personal journey to kind of, okay, this is kind of where it is right now. This is how I think about it, but this is where I started. This is where I got to.
Yeah.
Make it real for us.
Sure. So on that productivity piece, I think you're probably referring to the same article about where adoption is everywhere, but the productivity gains that are nowhere to be seen. Right.
Yes.
And I think part of the reason is because of just the haphazard or myopic way that just tagging on Copilot or Cursor or Cloud Code, and then now suddenly expecting, the productivity across the organization has to just go up just because of how I did this in a narrow way. I think that's just not realistic. And what we found success with is mostly in the SDLC process. I think we all agree that one thing is a fact, that the coding loop has collapsed, right? For the most part, what would have taken any good engineer a week can probably be done in 30 minutes or an hour. A lot of these tools like Claude Code, I personally use Claude Code a lot. Big fan of the tool, and some of the things that it still does amazes me. I'm like, wow, like this is insane that it can do some of these things. But just having an engineer access to just that in the coding loop, collapsing that is just not enough, because now I think it has been something that has been talked about in the industry about how the complexity or that bottleneck is shifting upward, downward, laterally, wherever you think about it. And what we found successful is moving it upwards in the requirement phase. So starting all the way, so some of the processes how we have changed is we have started sitting together as a group, small teams, cross-functional, with the lines between the back and front end, mobile, web, all of that is collapsed and almost blurred to a point where if you have access to this tool, as long as you know the right thing, what you're solving, generating the code is easy. And then a domain, someone who's a senior in that area can review the code and make sure it's actually correct syntactically and semantically, right? So what we found is just making sure that getting that upfront requirements in a very clear way with the team, understanding what is the business outcome that you're trying to drive. Not that I finished my ticket in 30 minutes, now I'm good to go. But what are the other bottlenecks? What is the problem? So for example, what we have done is we have a small pod, which when I say small, literally 3 engineers. And what we have done is their job is to make sure they reduce the checkout friction. Right? So that's a very concrete outcome that they drive. And there's an app dev, there is a web dev, there is a backend services dev, but they all sit with the product manager, the designer, and most of our and it's a refreshing change, honestly, where most of the conversation, everybody's trying to understand what problem are you trying to solve. Everybody's, this would never happen. It would be very siloed where product manager would give you a ticket or a story and you would do some sprint planning, some conversation, but not really digging into why. So that problem framing and that conversation has gotten much larger. And then after that is done, then the coding piece and getting it out and deployed and tested has become very trivial.
Got it. Before we go, and there's a lot of questions I have on exactly what you just said. It's a lot to unpack. Why don't you just step back and talk about your own personal journey? I mean, just like professional personal journey itself, and then your journey with AI in this whole engineering space. Just help set the context a little bit.
I have been using these for a while now personally, and I was trying to work on a couple of projects and products on the side.
But tell us, step back and talk a little bit about kind of your personal, like your professional journey. Like, where did you start? What is your background? Kind of that'll put that into context.
Sure. So, I have been lucky, honestly, to be in so many different roles that gave me very broad exposure to various different teams and functions within enterprise technology. So started out as a front-end developer, then became a back-end developer, then was doing middleware for the longest time with APIs and Apache Camel and Fuse ESBs and all that fun. Yeah. And then did API Gateway with Apigee and at IHG and a few other places. Then we built a AI product at one of the last companies that I worked with, which was a NLP-based machine learning, AI ML built on Databricks, which is a great platform in my opinion. And then did enterprise architecture for the longest time, and now I'm doing digital engineering, and I also did like SEO, performance marketing, so digital marketing side of it. So just as a function of having done this, gave me a broader perspective and to look at problem from so many different angles, and that I think is what AI has been helping with now. Is it can provide you that various perspectives and really clarify from different angles what problem are you trying to solve, and having that journey put me into this position where I can guide the engineers and the teams now on like, hey, what would have taken me X, Y, and Z to do something now is so much easier to do now with AI to really understand the problem.
Got it. So the broader point is, it seems like you have approaches. Now you're not like one technology, one lens, one view. You've kind of done pretty much everything in a very diverse kind of a career, and that kind of allows you to kind of probably connect the dots as
I like to think of myself as a generalist rather than a specialist, and I think generalists now in this AI world have personally I think have become much more powerful, because now as long as I understand how to connect the dots across different functions and what connects to some business outcome or user journey or behavior that we're trying to change, all I need is access to different things, and I can just use AI as that interface to make changes across the stack.
Interesting. And so going to the point you were going is like, so your own AI journey. I mean, you laid out how it has kind of, the coding loop has collapsed, but that's not enough and everything. How did you arrive at those insights? Like what was your AI journey and kind of what that led to?
Oh yeah. So I spent hundreds of dollars of Cloud Code tokens building the wrong things initially in the hype and or in the euphoria of like, oh my God, I can do all of this. This is so and there is a little bit of that the novelty factor, right? When you get such a tool, you're like, I'm gonna test out the limits of this. So ended up burning through a lot of tokens and was like, oh, this is great. I'm making so much progress and I'm building so much software. And after a while, I realized that, okay, not all of this is really good. There is so much slop. It doesn't have the right harness, which is becoming like more and more like an industry term. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Where is the harness? Where are the guardrails to make sure this works? Because the coding, this piece has become, the inner loop has collapsed. What about the outer loops? There is an impedance mismatch right now, where your coding can go as fast as you want. It's like almost the speed of electricity, right? Or light. But the outer loops of requirements, validation of the code, the testing, the deployment, the CI/CD release cycle, those loops are still operating at the previous pace. And that's what I realized is like, no matter how fast this inner loop spins, if the outer loop speed is slow, it's not going to move the needle.
That's actually a very good framing, the inner loop and the outer loop around it. I've heard different ways of kind of people articulating that. It's a very good one. So going after that, so it seems like there's a lot of stuff before coding that you need to kind of go and do to make it successful. What are those? And like, I mean, you were giving some examples of how you guys are doing it, but so like, walk me through like what before the coding starts. How do you think about leveraging AI?
Yeah. So even before that, I mentioned like that group session that we do with the engineers and all. So even before that, so what we have started doing is aligning with the design team and the product team on exactly what is this initiative that we are working on. Why do we need this initiative? And once we have clarity on what that initiative is trying to accomplish, then working with the design team, because that is still going to take a little bit of cycles, right? Like you can't just create designs using Google Stitch. I mean, maybe in one day, even that will become really good when you just do it and it prompts amazing. But right now they are not there yet. So design tools still, so working with the design team, getting all the designs ready, getting all that collateral ready before we can pull the team into a conversation about this is the journey we are envisioning. This is the problem we are solving. Now let's talk about what needs to happen. And in that, and that usually is like a 4-hour session. We just like block half a day and we just sit together as a group and try to figure out, okay, what does that initiative look like and how do we break it down into epics? And there is a big epic scaffolding, epic breakdown conversation that happens. Okay, how do we sequence this work? What do we prioritize? And once we have that conversation, then we go down to the next level of let's decompose this into features and user stories. And this is just mostly to make sure the work is broken down in a cleaner, nicer way. Because once you have that, and we are not doing any story pointing or anything with the stories that we are creating, because when when something can be delivered end to end, the time to value can be in a day, then what's the point of doing half a day of story pointing? So we have moved away from that story pointing. We just have like a almost like a very high level t-shirt size estimate of like, okay, this epic, by the time we get this coding and all of this done, it might take a week or two. But the bulk of the work is in the epic scaffolding and the decomposing of the features and user stories to figure out how we can then take that and then give it to the Copilot or Claude Code or wherever that may be, so that it has all the context. And we have built our own internal harness that can go and fetch the context from various sources like Jira, Confluence, other documentation, architecture, ADRs, decision records, and all of that. And to be able to then say, hey, I know you're trying to do this checkout work, but have you also thought about this ad integration that is on this checkout page for this brand? How are you handling that? So it has the context to prompt you the right way. So then it has. So once we answer all of that, we just are able to give it to Copilot and say, hey, plan this out and then code it. So there it can get you that code that is pertinent and actually considers all of the things without really missing big functionality gaps.
So two things. So when you're sitting to this like half a day session with the team, what tools are you using? Are you using are you using a Copilot or a Claude, a Claude to kind of have a conversation?
We are using the internal harness that we've built, which has a chat interface.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. It can.
So you're having conversation in the team, and you're kind of like typing it in, and you're going back and forth. You're basically doing a back and forth.
Yes.
Got it. And that internal harness that you said, it's kind of whatever. It's kind of in some ways kind of the company specific platform that you have built now. Like
yes.
What has gone into building that? Tell me a little bit. What is that internal harness? How did you go about building it?
So, it is more or less just a way for us to integrate all of our systems, and we have provided a lot of skills files to this. So this is basically a MCP server that has a Claude model, and what it does is make sure that it has MCP or API integrations to different tools that we use, and we have trained it with a lot of skill files and other things, custom prompts on, hey, when I say I'm working on loyalty feature, make sure you go to this repo or make sure you go to this documentation and pull the right context that's available.
And is that like how do you interface with it? Is it like a kind of a custom front end that you have kind of created with an MCP file, and then you do API and MCP API integrations to it and given it all? So that must be an effort to kind of build that thing.
Yeah, it has taken almost, I think, 6 to 7 months since
6 to 7 months to kind of build that
in development, because we started onboarding and we started using it and finding value. So now we are expanding it out to the entire organization.
Got it. So in some ways you have kind of created your own, I mean, I don't know, like a AI, or a SDLC or a development environment.
We call it our like AI SDLC agent.
Oh, agent. Okay, but it's much bigger than an agent.
Much broader, but right now the use case it's tackling is just the SDLC agent.
It's just SDLC agent. So do you have that, and then basically you get on a room, you kind of like there's a front end chat capability, you kind of go and talk. So it is already kind of with the right harness and everything, kind of giving you the right. It's almost like a requirements document, a BRD in some ways, right? Like, what do you get out of that like 4-hour session?
So. Out of that session, what we get out is an initiative to epics that are broken down, and from epics to features and features to user stories. So we get all that decomposition done of one business outcome to like it means 10 stories.
And within your harness context and everything, within your technical guardrails also, because it already is feeding that in.
We have provided examples of, this is what it looks like when you implement a good UI component. This is a bad example of what a UI component looks like.
Interesting. So now that that's done, so that's kind of, in some ways, this is before the coding starts. I mean, you have basically that outer loop that you were talking about. You have in some ways, your SDLC kind of agent or a platform. You have a different way of now doing requirements, and now that document is ready, then what happens? Then it goes to coding, right? I mean, or is something else that needs to be happened before that?
No, that's when the team disperses. They go off.
Who goes up like that? You go in a lot to individual engineers?
Yeah, so all the stories are assigned to one of those 3 engineers that are on the team. And then they pick it up and they figure out how to sequence, how to work. They basically take the story, prompt the agent in their IDE or in their terminal saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is the repo. These are the requirements. Plan for it. So it's important. We found that you need to have the plan mode before you let the agent go code anything. Yes. Right? So we make sure it does the plan, puts together a plan, review the plan. If something doesn't look right, update the plan, and then it codes. Then everybody just runs it locally, make sure it works, deploy it to QA. All of that happens, which is pretty normal.
Pretty normal. Got it. So one is two things. So it seems like without this approach, how big is your pod team that was doing it, and how fast were you shipping out till at least testing? And now, what's the new cycle look like in terms of size?
So in some instances, we have they are smaller, but much smaller, like very small feature changes, which were supposed to take 2 weeks, and now they were done in a day. So that is like almost 10x productivity gain right there. In some, and that's for smaller features and all. But in general, we have seen at least a 2x, 1.5 to 2x improvement.
Got it. 1.5 to 2x improvement, and with the same team size or a smaller team?
Smaller team size.
It's like, what was the team size before, and what's the team size now?
So general team size has been like about 8 people, and now with like about 3 to 4, you are able to accomplish the same thing.
Basically, what you're saying is the pod size is roughly half, and the time is probably twice, like half as much time. So it's basically 4 times overall if you go and start thinking about kind of the developer productivity overall.
Yeah, I was joking with my team. I was like, Jeff Bezos said 2 pizza teams. I'm coining 1 pizza team. With AI, we need 1 pizza teams.
Got it. That's fascinating. So tell me one thing. I mean, so now the coding, obviously, fundamentally, you're not like really kind of typing for coding in some ways. So what is
you're just typing in English, but you are still typing. But yes, you are just.
But what is what kind of developers been able to kind of are more familiar with, and I'm not everyone probably is adopting it and very happy. It's because it's like years of skills that you have done certain way of doing something, and now you are saying, okay, there's a different way of doing it. I mean, it's fast, it's great, it works, and I'll come to the downsides also. But who's been able to kind of adopt this more easily than others?
So definitely the software engineers who are just in that 3 to 5 years experience, they are just like fully embraced it. I mean, some of the latest and greatest things that some of the devs are pushing are in that range where they are just like, I'm going to adopt this all in, and I'm just going to become the most proficient, prolific engineer using these tools and beat the senior experienced dev, right? So they are mostly the ones. But taking a step back, I think how I'm seeing this play out is, it's almost like you need extreme generalist, like someone who's like 3-5. They are not specialist yet, but they are becoming extreme generalists with these tools. But then you also need those extreme specialists who can then actually verify, oh, the code change that was made for this this backend is not going to cause race conditions or thread contention or whatever, right? To have that deep specialization and make sure that it just because you are creating this code fast enough doesn't mean that we start breaking things, because obviously you can't move fast and break things at this scale, right? So it's a balance of extreme specialists and extreme generalists. And I think the extreme generalists are mostly those 3 to 7 years experience who are just like good enough to figure out like one part, but then they are willing to not be tied to, oh, I'm only a Java dev, so I'm only going to stick to Java, or I'm a front-end dev, so I'm only going to do TypeScript. They don't have any such allegiance to a language. So they are just like much more open to it.
Got it. And it's really, in talent development, many times we normally go and talk about T-shaped skills, T-shaped people and I-shaped people. So so it seems like ideally you want to be generalist in a lot of things and be very deep in one thing. So it seems like this T-shaped thing is kind of probably what you would want. One question.
Yes.
So now that you have done that, the other part of the whole outer loop of that you're talking about is testing, QA, reliability. How has that changed, or how will that change, or is that still manual?
Yeah, so even there we are making a lot of changes, but it is still not to the point where I would want it to be. So the QA team mostly uses, obviously all the APIs are automated for front-end testing. We have been using Comet from Perplexity. It has really good MCP integrations to Playwright and other testing libraries. So even there we are seeing acceleration. One place I do still want to make a change is on the code review process, because that is something that we still have mostly manual. Obviously not, well, we have our, where we source our repo, we source control our code. It does have its own agent and it does some code review, but it's not as or good as I want it to be. So I think I've said this once more, but I'll say one more. I'm a big fan of Claude, and Claude recently released their code review tool as well. So I'm looking to see if I can integrate that into our review cycle. So that and automation on the coding with Comet and all. So things are changing, but they haven't completely changed. This whole CI/CD process, there is quite a few things in the outer loop that still need to be improved and changed, but it's gradually happening.
It's happening. So now we talked about kind of where it kind of speeds things up, right? What about where it actually creates new vulnerabilities, new roadblocks like governance and trust and reviews? Like how's that now that bunch of the stuff is not manual review? How are you dealing with that? How are you adapting the process towards that?
Yeah. So there are definitely new challenges. It's always a trade-off. There is no single silver bullet, right? So from a governance standpoint, we have been trying to improve the harness that we have built, and making sure that we build evals around how accurate is it always when it retrieves this information and all of that. So trying to move as much up the stack to make sure that it is calling the right tools, it is referring to the right skills when it is returning some responses. So to make sure the accuracy is up. And we have a lot of other governance from a design standpoint that you have to go through no matter what. Even if you're using AI to code, you just still have to go through that governance for any design changes you make from an architectural standpoint. I think the biggest potential issue, and that's something that we have not put any concrete step in, is around code that can create vulnerabilities, right? From a security standpoint, because AI code can look right, but can encode things that you don't want to in your production systems. Right. So how do you navigate those vulnerabilities is still something that I don't think we have a good answer on, and we are still working on.
And is there like a some sort of a review committee or a board, like from a governance perspective? Have you created some? It sounds like you have integrated. You've kept the same governance process of software, and you have integrated some of the new things into the same governance process. Is there anything net new that you had to develop from a governance perspective, or a sign-offs and other things, just to be?
That there has to be a human domain expert, the extreme specialist who reviews changes to any critical functionality.
Got it.
And
are you finding more? Are you finding more issues? Are you finding more risks? Or like, is there a way to kind of just say, hey,
there are edge cases for sure that are missed. Not every edge case is covered, but that's more of a requirement problem, right? So when we do find something, we go and update our harness with the skills and the prompts to make sure, hey, this was something that was missed. Make sure next time you work on these such tickets, you have this edge case or this condition documented. And
so in some ways you are making that harness, that SDLC agent, like almost like a living learn. I mean, so it learns, because in a traditional model, yes, you find an edge case, but it's in person's head. I mean, someone else will probably go through and find the same thing, but now you have kind of put it right in the harness right there.
We kind of made that as a recursive self-learning loop there, so that you learn something, now go and instead of just like, oh yeah, we missed that and forget about it, just go update it so that next time it doesn't miss something like that.
Got it. So as you look ahead, what would be the kind of it seems like you mentioned some of the things. What will be the 2-3 change, or what are the 2-3 next steps that you would do as you kind of build out this AI SDLC mission out?
So I think security, making sure we have something from security code review standpoint and security standpoint. I think those are the two biggest things that I would be focusing on. And then the next bottleneck would be how to easily, quickly QA this and deploy it. I mean, this is your going back to traditional CI/CD then.
Yeah.
So the key piece is the code review and the security, making sure scans that everything is kosher and can go to prod without a lot of manual intervention. Because right now, that has introduced more manual steps into the whole CI/CD process.
I see. Because that's not integrated. That's not integrated. That's some newer things that kind of have come into that. That's interesting. So Mirza, if you were to step back and advise engineering leader, a chief product officer who's going on this journey, right? Okay, I need to make this thing AI ready. What advice would you give them? Like, what are the steps to follow? How would you get started on a program like this and kind of go about doing this? No, including the mistakes that you have made probably along the way. So kind of what not to be careful about.
A lot of mistakes. How much time do we have? So I would focus on, I think, 2 things. First thing would be that harness, right? That harness is going to become the competitive advantage for businesses, because all these models are commodities, right? They are general commodities. They cannot do anything without the right data and right context that you provide. So how do you build that harness that can synthesize information across different functions? That there is, even when we were building this, there was a lot of tribal knowledge. And this is how this process was done to upload content on Contentful or Cloudflare, whatever tool. So extracting that tribal knowledge out and building that as part of the harness's context and skills, I think it will be the single biggest investment that any leader can do right now with these models. I would start there. And the second is more operational from a looking at what you're trying to do. Just giving Claude Code or Cursor access and looking productivity from a lens of an individual, and moving back and looking at productivity from a process standpoint, I think is going to be the other big shift. It's like don't just look at, how can let me buy this tool to improve just coding. No, look at how you can, what outcome are you trying to drive? Like, it's like, don't buy QuickBooks, buy a tool that can close your books. Right. So something along those lines where what is the business outcome? That is the process that you should be optimizing, not individual in that process who's just part of that chain.
Is the work and the workflow. Don't optimize the work, optimize the workflow.
Yes.
Right.
So I think those would be the two key areas that.
And how did it get started? Like, I mean, you're saying like 6-7 months to invest to harness. Like, was it a dedicated team that was kind of launched to say, okay, we need to figure this out? There was a governance process. Is there a AI leader within the engineering? I mean, like, what's the org imperative about how it got started?
Yeah. So it started with my boss and our CIO, who were like, we need to rethink how we are doing SDLC. And once we had their support, then it was just a band of enthusiastic engineers and a couple of leaders who just like, we were connecting around 4 every day, 4 to 5. We're just sitting together and like, hey, how do we build this? How do we build this? What do we do? And just, it was almost like a side project that we started. Yeah. And then once we started proving the value of this platform and how we were starting to see the productivity gains, that's when then we were like, okay, you know what, now it's time to create a project funding for this. We need dedicated people to support this, operationalize this, mature this. So after almost 3-4 months and proving that's when we got to a state where now we have dedicated people supporting this.
Got it. So it started like as a side project, bottom up enthusiasm. It got to a certain stage, but it seems like there was a top down support, but really bottom up, and then kind of centralize and kind of push it forward. That's really interesting. Any big adoption barriers that people should be aware of and think ahead?
Siloed systems, right? That is the biggest, where if you want to this harness, sometimes I refer to this as a connective tissue, right? So it needs to be able to access all of these different, like, I cannot have siloed loyalty, payment, and ordering system where I have no idea what goes in what, right? I need to be the agent or the harness should be aware of all those things. So when something is siloed off and there is these organizational boundaries and silos create a big challenge, where when you don't have that, then you lose the important context and you cannot just move fast enough. And that is why your product is just a derivative of your org chart, right? You're shipping basically an org chart, and whatever your dysfunctions of your org chart are clearly represented in your product. Because so how do you break that dysfunction down? How do you break down those silos? I think that is one. And the other is more, I think a lot of people who are still in that critic mode of like, oh, AI will never be able to do, or they played around with ChatGPT or Claude like maybe a year ago. And they were like, oh, you know what, it sucked. It didn't even know how many R's are there in a strawberry, right? Like those people. I would recommend like them to like update their priors, because the model change advancements every month, honestly, or every 2 months are night and day. So just still being tied to those notions from even 6 months ago, or even November, like 4 months ago, before 4.6 Opus. I think is something that people will have to get over and update their priors, and that is something that the pushback I get from like a lot of seniors, like, oh, it sucks, it's not good enough, and I'm like, sure, but have you tried with the latest one?
That's very, very good advice, Mirza. I mean, we could obviously continue on for a long time, but I mean, what a great story! Such an end-to-end perspective, and a very pragmatic step-by-step way around how things have happened. And thanks for sharing in a very candid way what still needs to be done. I mean, and what's the journey look like. I think for a lot of our folks who are listening to this, I think it will become, it's a very inspiring story, because it's very tactical and practical. So thanks for coming over and sharing it with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure having a conversation with you where we really geek out.
Likewise, that's why we enjoy it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Amaresh.